On the 24th of March 2022, a 14-year-old boy walked into an amusement park in Orlando, Florida. He was healthy, he was happy, he was on the best trip of his life. He never walked back out. Now, here is what makes this story different from every other accident you have ever heard about. The people who ran this ride, they already knew it was broken. They knew before Tyre sat down. They knew before he paid his ticket. They knew before his mother kissed him goodbye that morning. His name was Tyre Sampson. He was 14-year-old. He had a 4 gigapascals. He wanted to play in the NFL. And a broken safety sensor that somebody deliberately turned off took all of that away. Stay right here, because by the end of this video, you will never look at an amusement park ride the same way again. Before we go any further, you need to know who Tyre Sampson was. Not what the media said about him, not the debates about his size or his weight. Who he actually was. He was a 14-year-old boy from St. Louis, Missouri. A football player, a gentle giant, the kind of kid that every parent prays for. His mother worked every single day to give him a better life. And that spring break trip to Orlando was supposed to be his reward. He was not supposed to die there. And the saddest, most devastating thing about what you are about to hear is that the people who built that ride knew, long before Tyre ever sat down in that seat. They knew. But before we get to what they knew, there is something else you need to hear first. The last conversation Tyre Sampson ever had was with his mother. That same evening, before he got on that ride, she picked up the phone. He told her something, and she gave him an answer that she will carry for the rest of her life.
He called me that evening, baby. My Tyre called me. He said, "Mama, they got this big ride here." And I said, "Baby, you go on and have fun." I told him he was going to be fine. I keep going back to that phone call every single morning when I wake up, every single night before I close my eyes. I keep thinking, what if I had just told him to come home?
The 24th of March, 2022, 11 o'clock at night. Tyre Sampson and the family he was traveling with arrived at Icon Park on International Drive, Orlando, a popular entertainment complex, packed with tourists, the kind of place that feels completely safe because of how ordinary it looks. Tyre attempted to board 2 other rides that evening. Both times, ride operators turned him away correctly because he exceeded the weight limits. Tyre weighed approximately 383 pounds. He was a large young man, a football player's build. But when he arrived at the Orlando Freefall, the world's tallest freestanding drop tower, something different happened. He was allowed on. The ride's official weight limit was 287 pounds. Tyre was nearly 100 pounds over that limit, and yet he was placed into a seat, given a harness, and sent 430 feet into the Orlando sky. Here is why that happened. Investigators later discovered that the sensors on certain seats, including the one Tyre was placed in, had been manually adjusted. The sensors were designed to detect whether the harness was properly secured. They were programmed to stop the ride from operating if a harness was not pulled down far enough, a safety mechanism. The last line of protection between a rider and a 400-foot drop. Someone had deliberately overridden that sensor. Not by accident, not by a technical glitch. By hand. The cell phone footage captured by a bystander that night shows something that should have stopped every single person at that ride from allowing Tyre to board. His harness sits several inches higher than every other rider around him. The difference is visible. It is obvious. Anyone looking at that gondola could see it. The ride went up anyway. At 11:07 p.m., the Orlando Freefall reached the top of its 430-foot tower, tilted its riders face down toward the ground and dropped. At speeds of up to 75 miles per hour, the gondola fell. The braking system activated, and Tyre Sampson, with a harness that was never properly secured around his body, slipped through his seat. He fell approximately 100 feet before hitting the ground. He was 14 years old. He was on spring break. He had a 4.0 gigapascals. And he died because someone decided that overriding a safety sensor was acceptable. But here is the part that will make your blood run cold. That was not the first warning sign. But no report, no investigation, no lawyer could explain what this discovery felt like, better than the woman who raised him, because she did not read about it in a file. She lived it.
The hardest part is not the night it happened. The hardest part is what came after. When I found out the truth, when I found out that people knew that ride was not safe, and they let my son get on it anyway. For $35, a $35 ticket. That is what my son's life was worth to them. $35.
The Florida Department of Agriculture launched an immediate investigation into the Orlando freefall following Tyre's death. What they found was not a freak accident. What they found was a pattern. The ride had only been open for 3 months before Tyre died. It opened in December 2021. In those 3 months, there had been maintenance concerns. There had been red flags. And at least one person had tried to raise those flags loudly. A maintenance technician named Austin Campbell Alexander later filed a lawsuit, stating that weeks before Tyre's death, he had raised serious safety concerns about the ride directly to his supervisors. He reported cracked metal joints. He reported the dangerous practice of overriding safety sensors to accommodate larger riders. His supervisors did not fix the ride. Instead, according to his lawsuit, after Tyre died, he was called into a meeting and asked to sign off on maintenance tasks that had never been performed, to backdate the logs, to make it appear as though inspections had happened when they had not. He refused. He was fired. The civil trial that followed became one of the most extraordinary legal proceedings in American history. The ride's Austrian manufacturer, a company called Funtime Handles GmbH, was sued for wrongful death. The case went to trial in December 2024, more than 2.5 years after Tyre fell. On the day of the trial, the Austrian company sent nobody. Not one attorney, not one company representative, not a single person to defend themselves against the death of a 14-year-old child. They simply did not show up. The jury deliberated for 1 hour. 1 hour. They awarded Tyre Sampson's family $310 million. $155 million to his mother. $155 million to his father. The attorney for the family, Ben Crump, stood outside that courtroom and said what everyone watching already knew.
This was completely preventable. We're here doing a thorough investigation of this tragic killing.
Tyre's death was the result of blatant negligence and a failure to prioritize safety over profits. And the most chilling detail of the entire trial? Investigators determined that a simple upgraded harness costing $660 could have prevented Tyre's death. $660. On a ride that charged $35 per ticket. They chose not to spend it. 1 year after Tyre died, his mother watched them tear it down. And while every piece fell, she had something to say.
I stood there and I watched them tear it down. I watched every piece of that ride come apart. And I thought about Tyre. I thought about the little boy who used to fall asleep watching football games with me, I thought about the young man who was going to do great things. The ride is gone now, but my son is still gone too. No amount of money brings him back. No law with his name on it brings him back. No verdict brings him back. I just want people to remember who he was, not how he died. Who he was.
In May 2023, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Tyre Sampson Act into law. The new law requires mandatory weight and size checks for all amusement park rides in Florida. It requires regular independent safety inspections. It makes it illegal to override ride safety sensors. A 14-year-old boy had to die for that law to exist. The Tyre Sampson Foundation, started by his mother, now supports school athletic programs across Missouri because Tyre loved football, and his mother refuses to let his memory be only about the night he died. As of 2025, new lawsuits continue to move through the courts. The whistleblower who refused to falsify maintenance records is still fighting for justice. The full story is not over, but here is what I want you to take from this story. The next time you go to an amusement park, look at your harness. Compare it to the people around you. Ask yourself if it feels right, and if it does not, get off the ride. Because Tyre Sampson noticed. He told people he was nervous. He said something felt wrong. Nobody listened. Tyre Sampson, 14 years old. St. Louis, Missouri. Football player. 4.0 GPA. Gentle giant. Gone because a company chose profit over a $660 harness. Gone because someone overrode a safety sensor. Gone because the adults who were supposed to protect him didn't. Remember his name, not for how he died, for who he was.